everybody. Mark from Maple Capital Partners here, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor to be speaking with my partner at Maple Capital Partners, Gonzalo Trenosky, who we've come up in the world of real estate together, done a lot of deals together. We definitely been through thick and thin together on the real estate and entrepreneurial journey. So I thought it'd be a really great opportunity for us to speak with Gonzalo, learn a little bit more about how he's come along in the life of an entrepreneur. So with that, Gonzalo, maybe I'll turn it over to you. This is going to be all about you and your journey. So maybe if you could get us started, telling us a little bit about your story. What was your childhood like growing up?
I'm from Argentina, so I came to this country when I was like 9 years old. My parents emigrated here in the late 80s, and during that time of Argentina, if people know some history there, it was a dictatorship. So the country was run by a military dictatorship. So it was a little bit rough times there with the economy, just everything in general about being able to raise kids and stuff when we were young. So my parents decided that leaving the country would be the best thing. So we had an uncle that lived in the U.S. That uncle was able to hook us up with a contact in the embassy of Argentina, and somehow we were able to get an exit visa. And a lot of people during that time weren't able to get any exit visas it was just run by a terrible regime at the time. But we got the exit visa, and then we emigrated here in late 1989, I believe. And then we ended up in Brooklyn, New York, where we had some roots there. My dad was just basically a laborer at that time. I believe he was doing a lot of welding. So a lot of the fire escapes that you see in New York City, Brooklyn type of area, he probably built a lot of those during his younger 30 something. I think he was like 35 or so when he came. So he was doing a lot of that labor. My mom was a seamstress, so she worked on basically in the textile industry at that time in New York. It was much bigger than it was now. So she was doing a lot of work, sewing, things like that for clothing companies, I'm guessing. After about 5 years there, we then moved to upstate New York, where we had some other cousins that we lived up there. And it was just tough times in that area of New York. We weren't able to live in the best areas of New York City. So it was the rough schools and all that. So we ended up moving to upstate New York, Albany, New York. And that's basically where I went to middle school, went to high school, and then I ended up going to colleges up in that upstate New York, and eventually ended up in Hoboken, where I got my master's for engineering, because that's what I went to school with, and ended up basically meeting my network of people in New Jersey, and then Mark eventually probably in like late 2000s.
Yeah, thanks for giving us that overview. I mean, there's a ton there. I think that's one thing that we share is while you're a first generation, you came to this country from another country. I'm the child of the first generation. So I always think that that's a really unique experience in this country of having kind of one foot in two different worlds. And I was just curious, being that you came to this country, I'm sure you were very young and may not have recalled what Argentina was like, but was it difficult kind of assimilating to the American culture, or do you just remember it being easy, or what was that experience like?
It was definitely not easy. I do remember a lot of times being an immigrant, you don't have English, so you're kind of just trying to figure it out if you're going to school. And obviously the schools have a lot of immigrants these days. I mean, a lot of people who don't speak a second language don't speak English. So they put them in special courses and classes, and they try to help them out. But in the beginning, it definitely was. But young kids, man, they pick up languages like so quickly. I'm seeing that with my daughters, with them knowing already almost three languages, because my wife is Brazilian, so they're picking up Portuguese and all that. So we were able to pick up English very well. My parents on that end, it must have been much more difficult for them. Maybe we didn't see it so much because we were little. But yeah, they had really broken English, and they were just really just trying to navigate the whole U.S. culture and how things work around here. So I definitely give them props for figuring it out at that time. I'm sure in the 90s, it's definitely a lot different than it is now with technology. I think it probably came out to be a little bit more difficult, just picking up that technology, but it's difficult to tell. Once you learn the language, you get really comfortable with kind of like how things work around here. And what I did take from Argentina from my parents is just working hard and going to school, obviously getting your education, getting some kind of something you enjoy doing. So for me, it was really like the engineering, the construction. I really like things being built, things being designed, being out in like the construction site and things like that. So I kind of like gravitated more toward that area versus you, Mark. You a lot of finance and all that. So I did kind of like some of the opposite side of that stuff.
Yes, that's really cool. So you feel like you being a first generation American, you were able to soak up the American culture, learn the language quickly versus if you had come here later, were into engineering and working with your hands and construction early on, and that clearly translated into your career. What was your, I guess, transition from college to early professional life? Like, what was that like?
That's a great question. So yeah, like a lot of people nowadays, I feel like they're not really sure what they want to do. Like even at getting out of high school, I wasn't really sure. I knew I kind of like the trades and the whole like engineering side of things, designing, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to get into. So I kind of like tinkered a little bit with the different. So I did undergrad in arts, and then I kind of changed to structural engineering. Then I did a little bit of mechanical, but then I did like construction was kind of like the one that I really did like. And eventually to take courses, like anybody, you start taking courses in different areas. You kind of like you have a better feeling toward one subject versus another. And that's kind of how I went to. So after post college, I did the typical career path that a lot of people do in this country is that they finish your college degree, they get your W-2 job, and then you work on that for a bunch of years. And it's a great path, and I definitely recommend that for anybody is if they are doing the education, the college of that, and then definitely go work for a big, large company that you can get your experience with and get kind of like bearings and your confidence in that. Once you have some experience in that, for me, it was only really about 6 years of professional experience that I got in a big engineering firm in New York City that then allowed me to feel a little bit confident to partner with people at that time to start an engineering firm in New York City. And then from there, I just learned so much because once you really start doing it and get into it and figure things out, if you don't know something, you figure things out, you learn a ton more. So it was kind of a slow progression from getting your college degree, working for at least 5 years at a professional large company, get your experience, and then if you feel confident enough, go on your own and go in that direction. So
that was your transition to go from that big company, get your experience, and then eventually become the principal of your own engineering company along with partners. Now, you were successful in that company. You guys were doing big projects. As I remember, when we first met, you were working there and you were always super busy working on really exciting projects in New York City. So why did you choose to pursue entrepreneurship from that job or that career?
Yeah, so during the W-2, the 6 years, 7 years that I did in New York on working on jobs, I kind of like started really reading more into entrepreneurship and what people that own their own companies, what their day-to-day is. So I started reading a couple of books on that. I met a bunch of people like on the construction site, owners of like concrete companies, owners of steel erection company in New York, and the owner would always be on site making sure the project's going right. I would talk to them and kind of like figure out like, all right, this is the owner of this huge company. Like, what's it like? So he was kind of sharing a little bit of advice to me in those early days. And one of the things that kind of stuck out that one guy did say that owned his own concrete pouring company. So he was the one that goes in there and poured the slabs for these high-rise buildings in New York. And he was telling me, hey, kid, something like, hey, you're never going to be really free of time and wealthy working for somebody else. And that kind of made me think, all right, well, I'm working for somebody, and my original thought was to stay at Langen Engineering where I was working at the time for 15, 20 years and rise up slowly on that ladder, hopefully making it the principal one day in 20 years. Who knows? But that would take a very long time, and that would be a lot of work. That would be a lot of 60-hour weeks to get there. From that point on, I was like, you know what, let me see what it looks like to potentially maybe go on our own. That was 2007-8, and as everybody knows, in 2008, the bottom fell out in New York, and for me, all construction jobs in New York City basically came to a standstill. So Langen Engineering at the time started laying off a ton of people. I think 3 or 4 layoffs. They stopped 401k contributions, no raises, no bonuses for a little bit there. And then from there, that's where I met my partners that we then started a consultant firm. And then they started the firm first, and I knew that I was helping them out in the beginning doing like the civil side of things because it was a structural geotechnical engineer and 2 geotechnical engineers joining forces. They started their own firm, MFS Engineers, back in 2009. I left and worked for a construction company in New York for like a year, and then they asked me to come work full-time for them and share their dream, I guess. In the beginning, it was just 4 of them when I started in 2009 with them, working in my small apartment in West New York in New Jersey. So it was a slow start in the beginning. And then from there, things kind of exploded as we continued working and growing. So
And that's awesome. And so, yeah, I had met you and you were still at that firm and were in the thick of things. You had taken on some managing responsibilities. You had equity in the company. So you're more or less kind of towing that line between, well, you were an entrepreneur, but you were working for a company that was growing pretty rapidly. And then eventually we started to do stuff together. So just curious, like, what did your early ventures, or how did you come around to the idea of investing in real estate? What did your early ventures look like with us? What was our start look like for your real estate career?
yeah, that's a good question. I started MFS with the guys in 2009, and then it was probably a good 5 years or so that we were really working hard. We kind of felt the dream and everything. I got a little bit of equity in the company. And then eventually, just like any partnership, you get to the point where, especially if you're a minority owner of a company, which I was at the time, they were kind of like the founding members. And then I was brought in as the fifth partner at the time with a small share of ownership. And it kind of made me realize, yeah, I'm kind of an owner of a company with four other guys that own the majority of a company. It kind of still feels like a W-2 at the end of the day. I was working like crazy hours during that time. I think I was doing like 50 hours. And that's where I had my first daughter, Mia. She was born in 2016-ish or so, 17. So it was real hard, working 50, 60 hours with a small kid. And then my second kid came and I was also kind of working a ton of hours. And that's when, at that time, I then started feeling like, hey, this kind of feels like still a W-2 job. I'm working crazy hours. Yes, I'm making a great living, making good money, good bonuses and everything, and those jobs are right. But what am I really searching for here? I really wanted some financial freedom as far as like doing what I can with my time. It didn't feel like at the time there. I was basically doing like two or 3 week vacations a year, if that. And then I met you. I did a couple of flips, I think, before, and I was kind of showing you in that first meeting we had, remember? So I started getting into flips. West Orange is where I did 2 flips there. And I started getting a little bit of the taste of the real estate. I started going to events and getting to know what all this real estate stuff is, and financial freedom and cash flow and all that. And I think we were kind of learning together at the same time and back in those days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had done flips. I had done a couple buy and hold at the time. Condos really was all I could afford to get started, to dip my toes into real estate. And we both had the idea, let's come together. We could do more together than we could apart. You brought your skill set, I brought my skill set. And that's when we found the duplex, our first duplex, where I remember to this day, we would get out of work and, I would say, hey, I'll meet you at the property at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
or 7 p.m., whatever time we got there. And we'd work sometimes until 1 a.m. or later at the property, and then go home, go to sleep, get a few hours of sleep, and then start the whole thing over again. And that went on for, I think, maybe 3 to 6 months. And that was the beginning of our partnership, where we found out that we worked really well together, and that we both had such a drive and desire to be successful as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Kind of went from there. Just curious, like in the same vein of sacrifices, what were some of these sacrifices you had to make early on as an entrepreneur?
Like you said it right there. So we were doing after hour work. So we were doing our 10, 12-hour days. And I remember the same thing. I was leaving there and I was going straight to the Newark house, and we were working till like midnight sometimes, right? Doing our stuff our own, like just fixing things, getting the place ready and figuring out oil tank removal and who to call and all that stuff. I think at that point I really sacrificed. My family was really getting a lot of stress, because doing that for 3-4 months with a baby in the house that my wife was taking care of, that was very hard at that time. So that was one of the things. Definitely a sacrifice is family time at that point in time. But I think looking back on it, it was worth it, because the benefits that came out of like that initial investment rewarded us so many years later once we sold the property for a nice return, because we bought it, we renovated, we had tenants in there, we held on to it, and then we sold it at a good time. Yeah, I don't think I would change anything about that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is like when you embark on this entrepreneurial journey, you just have to understand, and I think it's a really good idea for anybody with a significant other, with a family, to make sure that you're both on the same page as far as, what it's going to require to do this. Because if you want to achieve anything extraordinary, you really have to take extraordinary action. That also separates, I would say, a failing an entrepreneur that's not going to make it versus one that's going to be successful, is that mentality. So it's kind of a way of filtering is, are you going to be willing to kind of make some of those sacrifices, whether it's weekends or some nights with the family? Unfortunately, I think that's at this point what it kind of takes. Now, in terms of providing advice to other entrepreneurs that are looking to start their first business, what kind of advice would you give those folks?
So kind of like me, kind of how I got it is based on when I was an owner with other folks in that engineering business for 12 years, it allowed me to understand really like the finance side of things, a little bit of marketing. So we had to do our own website. We didn't want to spend a lot of money at the time. We did our own marketing, a lot of face-to-face client relationships, where to get the word, and all that combined, it really makes someone confident to go on their own. And if somebody doesn't have the avenue to do something like this right away, the one thing I always say is that obviously attend meetups or conferences or other things that interest you that you kind of want to go into, and just network and meet people. Find a few individuals that you think would be a good partner to kind of partner up with and go at it together, right? And learn together on different things and see how that goes. I always think working with other people is a great thing because you're kind of leveraging your different skill sets that you may have. For me, I'm more engineering construction, obviously, and you were doing more a lot of the financing stuff, so putting all that together kind of worked out pretty well. So I kind of say that to folks who kind of want to start going on the entrepreneurial path is go in different directions, find different partnerships. And I'm in the mindset of like I know people have different ideas of like, hey, do one thing and just do that really, really good, and that's all you're going to be doing, right? I agree with that in certain situations. It may work for some people. It's fine. For me, it's like I like delving in different things. Now, granted, it may be in the same realm of engineering, construction, design circle, right? I'm not going to financing. I'm not doing like selling homes or going as a brokerage or doing what you do, Mark, right? I kind of know my limits. So know what your limits are and do different things within that bubble of the circle of your understanding of your education, and do various things. Because for me, I do various things, and if one thing's pretty going slow at one point in time, I know other things are picking up based on all these other things. And that's what allows me to kind of be self-employed and be able to pay for the bills and live the life that I want, that have revenue generating streams, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know that's a lot of advice that you get is focus on one thing, master it before you move on to something else. But I know you're very similar to me. We're both very curious people. And when we get in, we get obsessive, but then we master it. And then only after that point do we kind of move on to the next thing. So in light of everything that you're talking about, what do you do today? What do those revenue streams look like? What keeps you occupied?
So definitely the multifamily stuff that we're still doing together. That's weekly meetings and coordinating contractors and getting units renovated and kind of hitting our business plan. So for those apartment units in Louisville, Kentucky that we manage together with a group of other people, that takes up a little bit of my time. The other thing is I'm doing a consultant work for a nationwide company called Property Conditions Assessments. They've been doing property conditions assessments on all kinds of asset classes, hospitals, medical office buildings. Multifamily is a big one, something I know a lot about. So they call me up a lot when it comes to large acquisitions that they're doing. So I'm doing inspections. I kind of shifted a little bit more now to mechanical. So I'm doing MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, life safety inspections on these type of facilities. So I'm learning quite a bit there. So whenever there's work available, I get a phone call, and I like it because I get to travel all over the country. I've been to basically from west to east coast in the last 2 years. I've been consulting with them, which is pretty cool. I like to travel, so I enjoy that. And I meet different people, different trades, and you kind of interface a lot with the owners that are buying these buildings or that are looking to sell these structures. So you get to talk a lot of face-to-face with that. So that's one item that I like doing. The other one is engineering. I'm still doing a little bit of engineering. That's the stormwater design, land development design that I did back in New Jersey, but I'm doing it on a much smaller scale, small jobs like $4,000 or $5,000 little drafting jobs that I need because I'm still licensed in New York, New Jersey, and North Carolina. So I'm doing some stuff in North Carolina and then a little bit of New Jersey stuff for some architect friends that I've met over the years there. And then recently, last year in August, I started a small niche renovation company that we do kitchen and bathroom renovations. And here in North South Carolina, where I live, the homes are not that old. They're probably built anywhere from like 2000 to brand new. So these older homes, always people want to update their bathrooms and kitchens. So I kind of got a small little foot in the door. I'm getting a couple of jobs here and there for kitchen and bath renovation. So that keeps me busy as I get the work. I started the company last year in November, and year to date now, which I think it's a pretty nice thing to mention. I think gross revenue is $175,000, and I think it's pretty good for 1 year of just being open. And like I said, all these things I learned in the past, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of website design, allowed me to kind of like help me grow my base a little bit. I don't want to get too big. I just want enough jobs to do that, and then other things. The big job that I have a partner with locally here is that it's a 23-acre piece of land that we purchased about a year and a half now. We're looking to put in apartment buildings. So we put it through the entitlement process in South Carolina, in the city called Lancaster, South Carolina. So we bought that a year and a half ago. We got it through all the entitlements. So now we're kind of ready to see where we can move forward with starting the construction, but we're waiting a little bit to see how things shake out after the elections and then coming into Q1 of next year with construction loan rates and all that stuff. So that's a little side project also that I'm working with a partner here locally. That's a couple of things that I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say more than a couple. You've got your hand in a lot of different pots. I know we've talked since some of these businesses have taken off, and I really appreciate the fact that you have so many different things going on, because I'm very much the same way. I like to stay busy, like to stay engaged in things. And I think if you're constantly kind of trying different things and seeing what works and doesn't, number one, I think it makes you a better entrepreneur, because I think you can transfer certain things that you learn from one business to another. There are a lot of universal principles that can kind of translate, as well as tactical things about how to market and things like that. But also, I think more importantly, you're staying busy, you're growing. Every time we talk, I know you're up to new exciting projects and things like that, but they're all within that same realm. To go back to the original point that you made, was it's not like you're doing car wash investments one day and then the next day you're buying small businesses or whatever the case may be. It's all within the realm of engineering, real estate, construction, that kind of vein. So I do think that you're keeping your eyes on the prize as far as that goes. Now, as far as your goals for yourself or your business for the next maybe year, 5 years, 10 years, however, whatever kind of timeline you want to put on it, like what would be some of your goals for your business or yourself?
Yeah, so I have a 1-year sheet for the kitchen renovation project. So for each kind of like different, I guess, silo that I'm working on, a stream of revenue that I'm working on. So for the construction part of it, so the kitchen renovation, I guess 2025, I want to try to go up to like 250. So maybe double what I did this year for gross revenue. And I think that's definitely doable. It just requires now, I'm going to be bringing on a young kid that I met. They graduated from the University of North Carolina in marketing and SEO optimization. So he's small. He's kind of like, it reminded me back when like 2009 when I started with MFS, when we were like a small company. It's him and his buddy, and they have just a couple of clients. They work in Charlotte. And I so happened to have met him at a networking event, and he really wanted my business. So I asked him, hey, I'm looking to redo my website. Can you help me out? So he gave me a quote, very good price. And I know he's going to work hard. He's going to hustle. He's going to make sure he gets his first client or first 3 or 4 clients, very positive reviews and stuff. So I'm going to bring him on board, optimize my website, because as you know, everything now is just through Google searches and optimization. It's like the days of advertising in newspapers and yellow pages are completely gone. So I'm focusing, investing a little bit of money into that, in the hopes of doubling the revenue for next year, and hopefully keeping the guys on that I'm working on right now to continue working for me and doing these kind of renovations. For consulting job, I'm just going to keep on the same path. As they need me, I'll go and do those jobs. That's kind of like on autopilot type of thing. Now for real estate, the stuff that kind of like we're working on together, I think we kind of put a pause on multifamily for the short term, maybe up to next year or not. It's funny, I might come to you for boutique hoteling, because I know you're into that and you're doing quite a bit of that in Puerto Rico, and you're learning quite a lot of it. So next month, I'm going to Mexico for a week and a half to Mexico City, and I happen to meet this guy that owns a couple of boutique hotels, and we're staying in one of his boutique hotels in Mexico City. And I'm going to talk to him. He's going to like show me around and stuff like that, see what he does down there. But Mexico City is an amazing city. I mean, it's a humongous city, nightlife, restaurants. So I think it would be a great place. I'm not saying I'm going to do it. I'm going to check it out, but I'd go to you with any questions for sure on boutique hoteling.
Yeah, for sure. And that speaks to kind of what we were talking about before, is staying in your lane, but you're also open and curious about learning different of the real estate game. So that's really cool that you're open to that. And I think whether it's this guy that you're working with or meeting me initially, I think all of this comes to being curious and staying around the hoop, as I call it. So going to networking events, putting yourself out there. I know we met through Bigger Pockets. So being vocal about like what you're doing, I think that's so important. I mean, that's just as equally as important, in my opinion, as like learning the hard disciplines of how to invest in real estate or how to build a business, is putting yourself out there and being constantly looking for, hey, who can help me out? Who can I help out? And can join forces and go a lot further that way.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like not to put a lot of pressure on soft skills. I think soft skills is a very important thing, especially just little things like getting yourself out there. You're not going to get calls for deals sitting at home, not really going out and doing, if you're not doing anything. You got to go out, you got to meet folks. You got to provide value to people. I constantly get like questions and texts or WhatsApp people I met here locally asking me for, do you know this contractor? Do you know a good cabinet installer? What do you know about this mechanical system I have in this building? This one guy called me once, shared everything I knew like about it. Hey, this thing's super old. You should really think about upgrading to this, and this. And he was really helpful. And hopefully it'll come around. So I'm always like providing value to whoever wants it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. It comes down to, I think we're in the real estate business. It's really a relationship based business. You get those relationships, you're able to nurture them by being a good human being, making those referrals, like you said, or providing advice or information from your own expertise for somebody who may not have that same expertise. And then, going from there. That's awesome, Gonzalo. Thanks again for taking us through your journey from where you started, humble beginnings, coming to this country with your family, to now having multiple business streams and being a successful entrepreneur. And successful in my mind doesn't mean that your job is done and you can retire or anything like that. In my opinion, it's living in line with your values, which you said very early on. One of your values is time freedom, financial freedom, being able to kind of call the shots. And you've really designed your lifestyle around being able to do that. So now that you can be around your daughters, and if you need to step out and spend the day with them or whatever the case may be, but you've made sacrifices over the last few years of us knowing, each other to be able to get to where you are today. I'm really happy for you, really proud that you've been able to achieve that. So I'm looking forward to future conversations like this. I know our audience oftentimes hears from me, so I wanted to have them hear from the other half of Maple Capital Partners. So thanks again.
Yeah, to be here. I appreciate the call to get on here and kind of share a little bit of my story, what I'm up to right now. Like you said, I'm not out there too much when it comes to MCP, but we're still working together on different things. We're still managing our properties. And anybody wants to call me up, have a question on what I'm doing, these different types of ventures I'm in, I'm more than happy to share my information. My email and stuff is on the website. Give me a call. We can have a chat.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Gonzalo, and look forward to hearing from you soon. We'll sign off as we always do at Maple Capital Partners. Be kind, be charitable, and invest wisely. Thanks, folks.